My name is Rebecca Klingler, and today I'm going to be discussing cultural and environmental factors that affect same-sex attracted individuals. The first factor that affects this population is the way that they have been viewed in the media. From 1930 to 1983, the Hollywood Production Code and the Code of Practices for Television Broadcasters indirectly prohibited depictions of homosexuality in the media. Then when the portrayal of same-sex attracted people was finally allowed into the media, it was portrayed very poorly. Most homosexual characters were portrayed as child molesters, victims of violence, and drag queens. Finally, in the 1970s and 1980s, homosexual people finally started being viewed in a better light. However, the characters in these shows were never the main characters, and often they only appeared for an episode or two within the series. This all changed when Ellen launched her show as a gay main character. After this event, several shows began to have homosexual main characters, such as Will and Grace, Dawson's Creek, Spin City, ER, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. These shows all began to show homosexual characters in a positive light, even though some portrayals can be somewhat stereotypical. There have since been many shows with homosexual characters, and a recent survey discovered that these characters are often influential within the homosexual community to assist with self-realization, the coming out process, and identity comfort. Many LGBT people view these media characters as role models and find comfort while watching them. It was also found that positive portrayals of the LGBT community in the media helped people within the community feel less sad, less dejected, and less depressed. Family support plays a major role in the life of a homosexual individual, especially if they are within the adolescent stage of life. It has been found that most homosexual adults grow up with heterosexual parents. Because of this, when the child comes out as gay, the parents may not receive that news well. Many heterosexual people carry a negative attitude towards homosexuality, and most heterosexual parents want their children to also be heterosexual. Because of these internal biases, a parent may react negatively to a child in many ways. This can range from anxiety about the child's well-being in future all the way to abuse and even kicking the child out of the home. This lack of support to the teenager can lead to an unhealthy self-image and may cause them to form unhealthy relationships in the future. Having a supportive group of peers is essential to the well-being of anyone, especially in the adolescent phase. However, a lot of lesbian, gay, and bisexual people do not have a good support system from their peers, and many people within this group even get bullied by others for being different. It was found that 33% of people in this community report being bullied at school within the last year, 27% report being cyberbullied, and 10% have not gone to school for fear of their safety. These are startling statistics and something that needs to be changed. One way to do this is by creating gay-straight alliances. This alliance is a school program that allows children to learn more about sexual orientation and gender identity in order to learn more about their own preferences and also learn how to support those with different preferences than themselves. These programs greatly improve understanding and could decrease the judgment and bullying that homosexual people endure. The cycle of violence is very prominent within this population. This is due to the fact that often gay individuals are not accepted by and may even be bullied by their peers and family members. This can lead to negative attachment outcomes for this group, which may cause them to form unhealthy relationships later in life, which can ultimately lead to abuse and violence within this group. It has been found that 43% of lesbian women and 61% of bisexual women have experienced rape, physical violence, and/or stalking at some point in their lives. It has also been found that 26% of gay men and 37% of bisexual men have also experienced stalking, rape, or even physical violence. These statistics get even more unsettling because it has also been found that 45% of victims within the LGBT community do not report the violence they experience because these victims often get met with ineffective and victimizing legal responses. This lack of support allows the cycle of violence to continue in these people. The largest problem with the political system when it comes to this population is that they have very little representation within the government. There are only a few openly gay public officials, and it is difficult to make a change with such a small group. Without proper representation, it is difficult for this group to pass legislation that would improve their quality of life. Currently, there are several discriminatory policies in place. One of these is that members of the LGBT community cannot participate in the U.S. military, which is one of the largest employers in this country. Another example of discrimination is that there have been several cases where a child has been taken out of a completely safe and loving home just because the child's parent is homosexual. There are many more examples, but these are just a few. Another issue is that there are very few states that have passed non-discriminatory policies in order to protect people within this group. As you can see on the map to the right, all of the gray states have no protections for this group. This means that members of the LGBT community in these states can be denied housing, denied a job, or fired from a job simply for the fact that they are gay. Putting these protective policies into place would ensure that members of the LGBT community have the same opportunities that heterosexual people have. There are many factors that make this population more vulnerable within the community, with the largest factor being discrimination due to the widespread homophobia that still exists in our world today. In the chart on the left, it talks about ways that LGBT individuals have changed something about themselves in order to avoid discrimination. Some of these ways include changing the way they talk or dress, avoiding certain public spaces, and cutting important people out of their lives. It has been found that 1 out of 4 LGBT people experienced discrimination in 2016. This is a massive number. Some major areas that LGBT people experience discrimination is within the workplace, public spaces, and healthcare. In the workplace, many LGBT people have been denied a job due to their sexual orientation. In public spaces, like restaurants, hotels, and government offices, LGBT people are often denied equal services or are even physically attacked. In healthcare, more than half of the LGBT community reported being discriminated against by providers or were even refused care in the first place. This discrimination greatly increases the level of vulnerability that this population faces. In a recent study, it was found that attitudes about homosexuality are greatly influenced by the country in which people live. It was discovered that in Western Europe and the Americas, homosexuality is generally accepted. However, in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Ukraine, the Middle East, and Africa, homosexuality is not widely accepted. This is due to many factors, including economic development and religious and political views. In the graph on the right, you can see a detailed view on the areas in which homosexuality is more widely accepted. Those areas are green. Research shows that same-sex attracted people are more susceptible to poverty conditions than straight people. It was found that 29% of lesbians are living in poverty and 25% of gay men are living in poverty. This could be due to the fact that these people are often discriminated against in the workplace. Studies have shown that 42 to 68% of LGBT people report employment discrimination in matters of hiring, firing, and promotions due to their sexual orientation. Because there is a high level of unemployment for adults in this group, there is also a higher level of homelessness that affects this group. Homelessness also disproportionately affects youth in this group. It has been found that 11 to 45% of homeless youth identify as LGBT. Within these youth, the 3 most common reasons for becoming homeless include running away, aging out of foster care, or running away from foster care because of violence, being forced out of their homes because of their sexual orientation. Another factor that disproportionately affects this group is lack of healthcare insurance. Because of this factor, many people in this community have worse health outcomes because they are less likely to get routine exams and tests. It has been found that people of color within the LGBT community are more likely to be discriminated against than Caucasians in the same group. This is due to the fact that they must face 2 types of discrimination at once. They face both issues of racism and homophobia. Because of this, people of color are more likely to be victims of intimate partner violence, be unemployed, and receive discrimination by healthcare providers. These people may also experience an identity crisis because they do not fit perfectly into the LGBT community or the Black community. Religion can also play a role in the way the LGBT community is perceived. In a recent study, it was found that 54% of people say their religious beliefs do not conflict with homosexuality. 33% say their religion causes a lot of conflict, and 10% say there is a little conflict. In the graph on the right, you can see some different religions and the level of conflict each one has with homosexuality. with white evangelical Protestant having the highest level of conflict and unaffiliated having the least amount of conflict. There are several differences in each gender within the homosexual community when compared to their heterosexual counterparts. For example, lesbian women are more likely to be victims of domestic violence, experience mental health issues like depression or anxiety, use tobacco and drugs, or drink heavily to cope. They are also more likely to be overweight than straight women. Men also have several differences. They are more likely to have HIV and other STIs. They're more likely to use tobacco and drugs and drink heavily. They are also more likely to experience mental health issues like depression than straight men are. One issue that faces homosexual people is the lack of access to non-discriminatory providers, especially in rural areas. This issue can be improved by the use of telemedicine. Telemedicine allows LGBT people to gain access to inclusive providers anywhere in the world. Patients enjoy this program because it allows for continuity of care and makes it possible to find a healthcare provider that is a good fit for each individual patient's preference. This population often faces both implicit and explicit bias from those around them. People may treat them differently because of their sexual orientation, and others may actually openly bully them because of their sexual orientation. This issue is especially important in the area of healthcare. Research has found that straight providers implicitly always prefer to treat other straight people instead of lesbian or gay people. However, the explicit bias is weaker than the implicit bias. This bias is important because it has been found that 42% of LGBT patients have reported being mistreated by healthcare providers, and 14% of people in this community report postponing needed medical care because of past experiences of discrimination from healthcare staff. It has also been found that 8% of lesbian, gay, or bisexual people reported that a healthcare provider refused to care for them because of their sexual orientation. These statistics are startling because as a healthcare provider, we know that everyone deserves to receive the best care possible. It is so important for healthcare providers to recognize their own personal biases in order to give all patients the care they deserve. Overall, health disparities in this population can be improved by an environment that is accepting and inclusive of all people. Like we discussed earlier, some countries are more accepting of homosexual individuals, so outcomes for people in these areas would be more successful. Health disparities can also be improved by passing legislation that protects people in this community and prevents them from ensuring discrimination, especially in the workforce and healthcare settings. And here is all of my references that I used throughout this presentation. Thank you so much for listening. And there's the next slide of them continued.